Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Good Morning Eastvale. My name is Molly Kortson, and I'm the city's communications officer. And today we are joined by Leah Amico, very exciting guest. And I don't usually do this. I usually let guests introduce themselves, but I want to read a little bit of your bio, and I'm going to read it because I cannot memorize this. But Leah is a 3-time Olympic gold medalist with USA Softball, a 2-time world champion, a National Softball Hall of Fame inductee, a 3-time national champion at the University of Arizona, and you have many other things. But I know your bio is very long and extensive and elaborate, but I just wanted to read that to kind of set you up. I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit, but I just wanted to start with that. So.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to play at the University of Arizona. We won national championships while I was there. That led to me making Team USA. Got to represent the United States of America for a decade and won 3 Olympic gold medals in Atlanta, Sydney, and Athens, Greece. Mm-hmm. And then I have raised my children, my 3 sons here in Eastvale with my husband, Tommy. Mm-hmm. It's been an amazing city to raise our children. I grew up not far from here in Chino, but that led to opportunities to speak around the country. I do a little bit of commentating with college softball on ESPN and radio with Westwood One National Radio. And so a lot of other opportunities. I've been coaching internationally. The last couple of years, I coached a professional softball team this past summer in Florida. And so a lot of different opportunities have come up after winning those gold medals.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I know you're really busy. She was just telling us off camera about her schedule, and it's very extensive. And we've been trying to get her on. We met 2 years ago, and we have been trying to get you on since, but I think the scheduling between the two of us has been very hectic. So I'm glad that you finally made it out. But Leah did bring her gold medals, and I just wanted to plug them so she can show them because I feel like that's very cool. And when I met her 2 years ago, she let me hold one and put one on. So I want to show that photo because that was so exciting 2 years ago. But thank you for bringing them. Thank you for being here. And I know we have some real questions, but I always like to ask guests funny questions before we get started. And I know you haven't seen them, so no. Just go with me. Okay, they're not that bad. Okay, so first question. I feel like people have probably asked you this, but if you could have gone back and played a different sport the whole time, a different Olympic sport, gone to the Olympics for something else, what would you have picked?
Okay, well, the child in me when I was 9, 10 would have said gymnastics because I think every little girl, especially back in the day, I was glued to the TV, okay? Mm-hmm. But then as I got older, high school, I would have said soccer because I absolutely love soccer and softball the same. And but then eventually softball opened more opportunities. Mm-hmm. And then I love what the soccer team did with Team USA. They were just getting really huge when we were as well back in the 90s.
I think it's really exciting for me. I mean, for all girls, I guess, but just growing up, women's sports for me, I felt we're not that popular. And now I feel in especially recent years, the Olympics this year, everyone was watching the girls gymnastics team, which was so exciting for me. And then also Caitlin Clark is coming on the scene. Yes. There's all these sports where I feel women are getting more recognition. And so it's very exciting to me. Watching gymnastics, I'm oh my gosh, I used to do gymnastics when I was younger too,
awesome.
Most girls. I'm man, I wish I could be out there, but.
Well, you see what they can do when they flip through the air. And let me tell you, in 96, after we went to the Olympics, won gold, we went to the White House and I was oh my goodness, look at those little things over there. In person, they're small on TV.
Yes.
No, they are miniature.
Yes, they're 4'8". And I'm
we were all at the White House and getting to meet the president at the time. But then it was cool because you got to see the different teams and athletes, and in person is a lot different than on TV.
Yeah, definitely. I know I'm 5'2". And I'm too tall to be a gymnast, which is so crazy. But okay, good to know. So soccer probably.
Yeah, soccer.
Okay, cool. Next question. What's one movie or show that you can watch over and over again?
Oh goodness, this is hard. I don't really watch TV.
So I get that too.
I don't even know. Oh my gosh.
Is movie? Maybe even a song.
Gosh, this is the worst. I'm terrible. I think I'm on one thing, on to the next thing. I don't like to reread books. I don't usually like to rewatch movies. I don't know. You know what? I'm going to go with the Titanic in a movie. I'm going to say I could just watch that. It's just fun. And I just got off a cruise. And I think I'm even more intrigued. But that is one of the few movies that I did go back and watch multiple times in the theater with different people.
That's fun.
I should say A League of Their Own. I mean, that's kind of, more personal.
That one's really good too. It's funny that you say you don't really watch movies, but you picked the Titanic because it's the longest movie ever. Like, I don't watch movies, but I'll sit down for 5 hours to watch that
When
one.
I
Like,
do, I'm going to be committed.
Yes. No, I like that. I don't really watch movies or TV shows either. I feel like I just get very bored. And I don't know if that's like the Gen Z in me, but like I'll be like, I'm going to watch something and I turn it on and I'm like, I'm bored. I'm over this. Like, I don't know what it is. I just don't really like it. Okay. Last question. Obviously, you've done a lot of very cool things in your life. So I don't even know if you're going to be able to answer. But what's one thing on your bucket list that you haven't done yet that you still want to do?
Okay, that's really good. Because I have done a lot of different things. Okay, I would like to see the Northern Lights. We were hoping, went on a cruise to Alaska, and we were hoping to see them, and we would go out in the middle of the night, put on the alarm, wake up, and go try to see just maybe one time, and it didn't happen. So I think maybe like Iceland,
yes,
or something like that. I would love to do that, and you know, that's something to me. Like, I love nature, and I love, you know, I've been in the mountains, and obviously here in California we have everything. I've just seen. I got back from Alaska, like I said, they had just the most beautiful scenery everywhere. But to me, like, there's just something so special about that.
I want to see the Northern Lights super bad. And I've traveled, definitely not as much as you, but like a good amount. I've gone to like several new countries the last few years. Like, I'm kind of gone a few trips every year, which has been really fun. And I was trying so hard to go to Iceland this year because the Northern Lights are supposed to be like the strongest they've been, and like that they're going to be in a long time. But because of that, I think everyone's trying to go there. So the tickets are like $1 million. Okay. And I'm like, okay, well, sorry. Like,
not now.
Maybe later in my life. I don't know. But anyway, but I really want to see those because I'm sure they're gorgeous. But the trip was just like, the tickets were so crazy. And I've tried to go before, and the tickets were like half of what they are right now. So I'm assuming everyone must be going there. And so I'm like, dang, I guess we'll just have to see them when they're like an 8 out of 10 instead of a 10 out of 10 because $2,000? No, that's too crazy. So
yes.
Anyway, well, thank you for answering the fun questions. I'll ask you some real questions now. But like I said, you've achieved a lot in your softball career. So what do you think has been like the most defining moment of your career, if you could like pick one?
Well, I tell people a lot about the moment when I was a freshman in college at the University of Arizona, because I just, you know, thought softball was a means to an end. I get to get a college scholarship. I get my education paid for. I was the first one in my family to go to a 4-year university, and had an opportunity that year at the Women's College World Series to be in the championship game. And I was like, this is the best thing ever, right? As a softball player, like this is the top at the time. And we end up getting into that final game against UCLA, and superstar team, superstar pitcher. They were absolutely the expected team to win. And I got the only hit in that game for us to win the national championship. There was a player on second base in the first inning. Pitcher had me 0-2. I fouled off a couple pitches. I got a hit up the middle. We scored barely. The catcher bobbled the ball. We scored, and then their pitcher gave up 0 more hits the rest of the game. And we went on to win. And I feel like, to me, like I was 18 years old. And not long after that, they said softball is going to be in the Olympics in 3 years. And in my mind, because of that moment, I truly believed I could be on the Olympic team, which if I thought too much about it, it kind of would sound crazy to me even. But at the time, you have all this belief because I just played against one of the world's best. I went on to win 3 gold medals with that same pitcher. That's so crazy. You know, like that moment for me opened my eyes, and then, you know, other opportunities that came afterwards really opened more doors.
That's awesome. I think too, when you're 18, it's such a good time because I think you think you can like do anything. Yes. You know, once you're like, oh, be in the Olympics.
Sure.
So why not? I could totally do that. Where I feel like the older you get, you're like, okay, let's be me. Like you get in your brain like, oh, that's not realistic. I can't do that. It's not for me. So I feel like when those pivotal things happen when you're so young, it like sets you up forever.
I think so too. And I feel like we almost need to get back to that no matter how old we are. Like we need to keep that mentality of why not me? Why can't I? And what I have found, I've come across a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of successful people. And I feel like they keep and they hold that mindset.
Yeah. Which is super awesome. So next question. I'm sure you've faced a lot of challenges throughout your career. So is there any specific challenges that you want to talk about that you have overcome? Do you have anything specific that was really pivotal for you?
It was also in college, and it was my sophomore year. And I also talked about this a lot because I feel like it was a make it or break it moment, not necessarily at college, but for the future path that I would end up taking. And I was a pitcher my whole entire life. I got recruited to Arizona as a pitcher, and I was also a first baseman. And my second year, my coach said, you know what, now we have 4 pitchers. It's too many. I need you to actually be an outfielder. Well, now I'm going after my entire life knowing 1 position, 2 positions, but really not outfield. And I kind of had to start from square one. And I tell people I had to go backward to go further, even further, to go forward even further. And for me, like, I really tell people the mindset I took into that, I believe was pivotal because along with that belief, I now had an opportunity, and instead of looking too far ahead, like, well, great, now this is probably going to close doors. Instead, it actually opened them. But I had to buy in every single day, and I had to stay after practice with my coach. I had to learn a brand new position. I had to learn to throw differently because literally, like, you throw, like, my arm would hang after I would throw like an infielder. Yeah. And by that year, within 1 season, I became top in our sport in the country. Wow. I was catching and robbed a home run of another Olympic teammate eventually of mine at the Women's College World Series.
Oh my gosh.
And that opened the door to then make the Olympic team because I wouldn't have made it as a pitcher or first baseman. Yeah. And so I say pivotal because you could look at it as like, okay, great, I just got demoted. A lot of people thought, oh, well, you were a pitcher and now you're an outfielder. You must not be as good. And if I bought into that mentality, I think it could have really set me back. But instead, like, I feel like I was able to do more. And then eventually USA team and my senior year of college, I went back to first base. So now I almost became more versatile by learning a new skill set that opened more doors. So very, very big moment, but my mindset was a huge piece. And then the coachability piece afterwards to buy in, do what coach told me, and then forge a new path.
That's so cool. I think too, like, when I started working in the government, I was very young. I'm still very young. But like over the last few years, I always ask people, like mentors, like, what's the most important thing? What's something that I can do to like be an asset to a team and to learn in this career and grow? And people always say to be adaptable, because I think in any job, in any career, any sport, anything you're doing, like you need to be able to be adaptable because you get so set on like this one thing. And if I was going into, like a job, like I have to be in this specific department or this specific field, sometimes things just don't work out and like it's not working out and you have to be able to just be like, okay, I'm going to adapt. I'm going to move. I'm going to pivot. And that gets you really far. And when I was starting in government, I never thought I would be like in the communications department, which is like what I am at the city of Eastvale. I was like, that is not what I want to do. Like, that's not what's speaking to me. And then I kind of fell into it. And then I was like, wait, I really like this. And it's just worked out for me. It's gotten me in a really good spot. And had I, been at a different city and like in those original departments I wanted to be, I'd probably still be like in those same jobs, like in a much different circumstance than I am now, So I think adaptability is important.
That's huge. And that's been my path outside of softball. I learned that huge lesson in softball, but I've seen it in my life, what you just mentioned. I got asked to do commentating with ESPN. They called me because my name was thrown out there. And then I was like, I had a bad experience with a different company first and was like, never again. And my husband was like, Leah, it's ESPN. And so I went a second time and all of a sudden was like, okay, I do like this. Yes. And then I've been doing it for now 18 years. Oh and then from there, people told the national radio people about me, and I do the Women's College World Series. And something that I would have not wanted to do because I didn't feel led to it. I didn't feel like I was qualified for it, and then got experience. And so that's why I try to tell people, put yourself in uncomfortable situations, or if you're willing to, you never know what doors of opportunity could open.
Definitely. Well, something too that I didn't put on here, but I want to ask you about is, I'm sure at some point when you decided like, I'm going to retire, you're done with the Olympics. I'm sure you were like freaking out internally, like what's the next move? And I'm sure you had to adapt to something else. Did you at that time, like now you speak a lot, you wrote a book, all these different things. Was that already in your brain of like, this is what I'm going to transition into? Or like, how did you make that transition? And what was on your brain when you were stepping away?
No, I could have never dreamt the path, and I wouldn't have chosen it probably. Yeah. But I look back and I'm absolutely amazed because one thing has led to another thing. No, I didn't know what I want to do. I was actually already a mom. My son was 3 when I won my last gold medal. Oh, wow. So I knew I wanted to have more kids. I was, 29, almost 30 when I was done playing, but I wanted to have at least 1 or 2 more children. I had my next 2 sons within the next couple of years, ended up homeschooling for 13 years, did not have any plan to do it. But the situation, my oldest son, it just made more sense, and then went into that journey. And then along the way, I just kept saying yes to opportunities. And I think that is huge, to be willing. Again, a lot of things made me step out of my comfort zone. Speaking, I literally, when I was 14 and I won my first national championship with a little travel ball team, I had to go to the Kiwanis Club and thank them, all the people who had sponsored me and, with fundraising. And I walked away going, I never want to speak again. And that was just a thank you. And I laughed that it became a career because I wouldn't have chosen that. But when opportunities came at first to go speak when I won my first gold medal in the city of Tucson at Arizona to share with these kids about how they can dream big. And then that was enjoyable. And then one thing led to another thing and a lot of doors opened.
So you talked about how you became a mom while you were still playing for the Olympic team. So was that something that was unique? Were there a lot of other moms? Was there a stigma regarding that? Do you want to talk a little bit about what it was like to be a mom while still playing?
Yeah. So I had won 2 Olympic gold medals. I had been married and I thought, okay, I could wait 4 more years. I want to go for one more Olympics. I still had this passion inside of me. Every single year with Team USA, you have to try out. So there's no guarantee I could make it for the next 2 to 3 years and still get cut. And so I told my husband I'd love to try. There was not a softball player on the USA team that had had a child and come back from it quickly. Obviously, it's a short turnaround. And so I just said, you know what? I really want to try to do this. I prayed about it with my husband. And I'd seen a women's basketball player do it with USA. I'd seen a women's soccer player. And it's funny how even though there were no softball players, even seeing a couple other female athletes that had it, it gives you that idea that why can't I? So I ended up having my son, took a summer off, and then got back to training harder than I ever had trained before. Now, I will tell you, because it was so new, there was nothing in place. So I think the hardest thing was that I had to financially figure out a way. And USA softball, we didn't make a lot of money, okay? And so I'd figure out ways to pay for childcare now on top of then when I leave. So what ended up happening, I got a little bit of support from USA softball, not much, but I ended up having someone that became like a family friend helping me watch my son while my husband worked. They would come and join me at times, but I did have to leave him quite a bit. This is the thing. The next Olympics, 3 of the players had children.
Wow.
They raised way more money for support and had much more support because now this direction had been set. I wouldn't change it. They got way more than I had, but somebody has to pave that way. And I don't regret it. I'm so glad I was able to be a mom and still play. It was harder. I had a lot more juggling that was going on, but my teammates were supportive. He just became, if you've seen the, movie League of Their Own, he became our little Stillwell angel. He was just younger. And, on bus rides, sometimes we just took him along. So it was a lot of fun. He was 3 when I won my gold medal.
That's so cool. So then after you had him, you did one more Olympics, like you said. What was going through your brain when you decided to be like, I'm done? Like, what was that decision like to decide to walk away?
So when I got named to the team, it was 1 year out from the Olympics. So they actually named the team and now you're like, okay. And I went to our training camp and they gave us a schedule of the whole next year. And it was a lot of travel and it was other countries and it was, 32 cities in the US. And I looked at the schedule and I just started crying. And I was like, wow, how am I going to do this? Because up until then you had a training camp, you had summer was pretty busy, but we could make it work. And I just felt this like stress of like, I'm a mom and my son and I have to leave him. And how can I, do both? And I just remember getting really good advice. You can do anything one day at a time. And I just remember thinking that has to be my mindset. I have to shift it, not the entire year, but I have to take it one day at a time. And so it was hard, but that became the goal and the journey. And so what happened was, as I was getting to the end and we were going to the Olympics, I literally knew like, this is it. Like I felt the passion start to leave. The passion I still had when I was, wanting to have a child and be pregnant and didn't know if I could make another team. It was there and it started to, and I knew like, okay, like it's time. Like inside, like it's time to move on. And I'm actually excited for this next season.
Okay. That totally makes sense. I've always wondered about that too, because it's so hard to walk away from something you've dedicated like your whole life to. And I think I was talking to somebody about this because obviously football season is like kicking off. And how you think like, they're just like playing the sport like for the short season, but it's like year round, you're keeping your body like ready, you're practicing year round. Like there's so much mental, like physical, like prep that goes in year round. It's not just like, a few months of the season, and especially with Olympics, like you were on for years and years and years hoping for this. And so I'm sure it was like so hard to be like, when am I going to be done? But you just kind of feel it inside you.
And I, what I think is tied to that, like, almost like the sacrifice was no longer worth it. Whereas like I was willing to do sacrifices, right? And say, okay, this is my priority. And it's true. If I do my workout in the morning, like I couldn't just spend the rest of the day and just relax. No way. Like it was hanging over me every day. And then once I would get my workout in, once I go to the field, I felt good. Like, okay, that day's work was put in, you know?
Yeah.
And so then you can move on. And someone asked me 4 years later when the USA team was playing and they were watching them and they said like, do you miss it? Do you wish you were out there right now? And I was like, I can't even fathom it because I put in work every single day. Yeah. And right now I've been a mom for the last 4 years.
Yeah, sure.
And so I'm like, but to them, they're just watching one tournament, right? And I know that every single day training that goes into it.
So since you stepped away from playing full-time softball, what are some, and now you're speaking a lot, doing a lot of speaking engagements. Again, you have your book and all these different things. What are some key principles you talk about when you're speaking?
Yeah, I talk a lot about the gold standard. When I went to Arizona, like this elite standard was expected of us. And I bought into that immediately. And I loved thriving at that level with other elite athletes. Then I got to the Olympic team and it was a whole nother standard. Like everything was just how you did things with excellence and giving your best and working with your own strength. So I talk about 3 key points and I talk about it being a map to excellence. And it's an acronym for M stands for mindset, A stands for action, and P stands for people. And I really believe in those 3 buckets, like your attitude, like whatever, how you think is so crucial because a lot of times, even as USA Olympians, like we won before we stepped on the field because we believe we're better than you. Yeah. We're prepared. We know it. Like you expect us to be better than you. And that's what you need to have, right? If you're going to be the one succeeding. So your mindset and being resilient, right? Knowing like as an athlete, in softball, you fail a lot, right? Like great hitters fail, 6 out of 10 times, right? And so like you learn like how do I adjust quickly, like you mentioned, right? Being able to adapt and what do I need to do? And I'm flexible and I can change and I can mold and I can come back from anything. And so you have that mindset. That's huge. And then A is action. I'll tell you, just intentional, consistent action. And a lot of people struggle in that area. Yeah. But as athletes, you're so disciplined. Yeah. And so you're willing to like say, these are the routines I have. These are the habits I have. So I talk about being consistent in action, but taking action that's moving you forward. Because let's be real, as an athlete, I could take 1,000 cuts, but if they're not really good swings and quality, then it doesn't matter. You can waste time too. But if you have intention and you're focused and you're working on something specific, so action. And the last piece, I believe a lot of people lack. They might be really strong mentally and they might be action oriented, but they struggle with people. And some people think you have to push people down to get ahead and they don't care how they treat people or leave people in their wake or they lead people, but they treat them terribly. And I really believe the best, like I think it's a win-win scenario when you can be your best, but you can grab arms and link arms with others. So for you working for Eastvale, I was able to chat with you guys as a group and being able to say like teamwork is a crucial part no matter what you do because we're all around people. And so having people skills, being relatable, being reliable for each other, even consistent in how we show up every day at work, right? Yeah. And I deal with a lot of different people in all different environments that I go to as well. But one of the things that I truly believe is that I think that third piece, that people, part of it is probably most important because really when it comes down to it, everything we do is relational, right? If people walk away feeling like they have value and you care, they're going to want to buy in more. Like I want to be a part of something that makes me feel better. And so I learned that through my teams, but I talk about mindset, action, and people skills.
That's awesome. I know. So at the City of Eastvale, we are very big on like the Strengths Finder. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I've done that.
But our city is like very big on that. And when we all start, we have to take the test and it kind of puts you into different categories of like, are you very task oriented? Like, are you a good executor? Are you a good people person? So it's really interesting to kind of see like what's important to you and like, where do you lie with these strengths? And for me, I'm very task oriented. Like all my top strengths are like executor, like, like strategic, like all these different things that are very like task. And like Emily, the other person on our team, she's very like people oriented. Like all her top strengths are like empathy, relator, like all these things. But it's good that we're like a good team. But they do a lot of training with us to be, obviously you're always going to have your strengths and like that's who you are. But to be like well-rounded workers and individuals and people is so important too. Because obviously you want people who are task oriented and do work. But also, if they're not good with people, like it doesn't really matter at the end of the day because no one wants to work with you.
Yes.
We got to be good to the residents, like to the community, of course. So they'll teach us like, okay, well, you're very good with the tasks, but now maybe how can we like work on the relational skills? Or you're great with the relational skills. How can we make you a little bit more task oriented, like more well balanced? And so I think it's been really good for me as I'm stepping into the workforce the last few years, trying to just like get a hold of what's going on, you know, in the city and the government with the community, to just try to learn how to incorporate all of the things, because you do need to, you know, like with the map, like you need to have obviously like the people skills, but you also need to be like action oriented, pushing forward. For sure. And you can't have one without the other if you want to be successful. So
yeah. And I love what you're saying, because what's happening is you're recognizing it and then you still have a decision like, okay, am I willing to work on these areas? Yeah. And if I think about my softball team, like that's how it was. We were all different personalities. So yeah, physically you looked at us and you knew we had different strengths, right? And we played different roles and different positions, but then you add in the personalities, right? And when conflict arose, especially that's within any environment, any group, right? There's going to be struggles. How you deal with it is so crucial to then how far you can keep moving forward, right? Or does it kind of hold you back? And are there, you know, other areas that start to struggle because of that? So I love you mentioning that, because we also with softball did those strengths as well and talked about it. And like you said, we were able to say, okay, how can we still join all of this together and keep moving forward? Yeah, I think it's important to be well-rounded, and not just obviously with work, but like even with sports, like that's such a big thing, and that's your guys' work, you know? And so you don't want to, nobody wants to work with someone that's all task or like all people and they're messing around all day and like not putting in the work. So I think I'm so happy that our city is very big on making us just well-rounded like individuals instead of like just work or just like, you know, talk to people. It's and that's how I feel. Like I wrote my book, The Gold Standard, 14 Ways to Live a Life of Excellence. And even writing this, I just kind of took situations through my journey that I saw and the importance of goal setting, right? And discipline. There's just every aspect, leadership, communication, like all the different pieces that I saw, even enjoying the journey. Because let's be real, you can be super successful. You can even be around people and treat them okay. Yeah. But like if you're a miserable person, like, you know, and I think usually it eventually flows out. But this idea is that like it is the whole person. Yes. And what I truly believe is that we should be able to, like you and me, and say, let's link arms and encourage everyone to find what makes them tick, help us all to be more well-rounded, but let's make it a win-win for everybody. It doesn't have to be like, I'm going to be better, you stay back there. Like it's like, let's lift others, like while we're lifting. And that's the premise of my book, was like leadership sometimes is only looked at as like being in a certain role, right? And you have a title and you come in, you're the new person. Okay, well, definitely. But no, you come in even as a new person and you have a voice. Yeah. And what you have to say matters. Yeah, you may not be the main voice that everybody's listening to yet, but that idea to say, well, how can I impact this position, this role, you know, this community in a better way? And everyone, I don't care what age we are, I don't care where we are and what stage of life, we can all make a positive impact by influencing others in the right way.
I always try to remind myself of this thing, because I think when you see other people being successful and like having all these wins, like it's natural to be like jealous or to take that hard on the shoulder. And I always try to remember, like, someone else's win is not your loss. You know, like we can all win, or if they're winning, like that doesn't mean that it's like a chip on your shoulder, you know, like we'll all get there in our time. And I think it's a natural reaction of like, oh my gosh, this person got a promotion. This person got this title, this role, this pay, this whatever. And so I'm always like, okay, their win is not your loss. Like you can both win and like win in different ways, or like your time is coming. But I think that's something I'm sure you guys dealt with a lot playing softball, and like, you know, as you're changing positions and there's new girls constantly coming into the team. I'm sure you played with so many teams throughout your career. Like I'm sure there was times of like jealousy and
for sure. Difficulty. People getting certain attention. You're on Team USA, and just some people are, you know, more able to get the attention and media attention. I saw some jealousy within the team amongst that, but the idea was like, instead it needs to be like, what opportunities do I have? And like you just said, like cheer them on, because when you get the opportunity for that, you want people cheering you on. And I do think it's in our nature, but you're right. Softball taught me a lot about that. So then it's allowed me to go on post softball, which is much longer, to then see in different areas with commentating, with speaking, with, you know, different things, to be able to say like, I'm really genuinely happy when I see people getting these opportunities, even if it's something I'm working towards. To me, I use it as motivation. Like I want to be able to do that too. And so when you can turn that into motivation and cheer them on, you're going in the right direction.
I like that. Okay. So the last thing I want to ask you about is obviously you've had a lot of success in your career, in your lifetime. So what would you say success is to you? Do you have any moments that you feel especially successful in, or how would you define success like at this point in your life?
Yeah, it does kind of change. Before, obviously, winning the national championship, but not even just winning, because you could still have a successful year. The year we came up second, that was an amazing year, and there were so many wins. So for me, I think really keeping it focused on the process. I think that's what led to the outcomes that I had. But for me, like, you know, it was nice to finalize my book, but the success for me was like writing it and digging into the process of it and being willing to try new things and hard things. And so for me, I feel like, you know, when I get an opportunity to go share, like, I feel like that is a success, and I haven't even done it yet, but it's like, because now the prep starts, and that's where, you know, like, really, I just want to give my very best. And that's it. Like, if I put my best into it, then I cannot dictate the outcome. I can't even dictate other people's thoughts or views. But I feel like success is in the process of truly trying to be excellent in it. And that is, again, did I have the right mindset? Am I taking the right action? Am I treating people the right way along the way? And surrounding myself with the right people. So I personally, I do a lot of different things. I'm in a lot of different groups. You know, I go in and do commentating, and it's very short time, but we expect to be excellent for that 1 week on the air. Now, some of them, they do that for a living. I don't. They lift me up. I try to be my best, and, you know, and we just work off of each other. And so to me, that is the success, is truly just giving your best.
I think it's important too, how you've been talking about like the joy in the journey and like focusing on the journey and the process of it. Because I think with anything in life, so much of it is like the lead up, you know, like winning a gold medal is amazing, but you spent 4 full years, like every single day working on it. So like when you finally win, you're like, yay, but that was just one tournament when you've been doing this for 4 years. And I feel the same even here at the city. Like we, you know, we'll work on these huge projects, and you're working on them for like months and months and months. And, you know, sometimes even years. Like we're doing infrastructure projects here in the city that took years, you know, sometimes decades to do. And then you do the ribbon cutting, and everyone's like, yay, it's a successful day. But we just spent a decade, you know, of like many successes, many wins, like all this process. And I think sometimes we're so focused on like, I got to get to the ribbon cutting day, I got to get to the tournament day, that we like neglect to think about all these years that we spent to get there. So like just enjoying the process every day is something I'm definitely like trying to figure out in my career. Of I'm like working, and then something happens, and I'm like, oh, it's kind of anticlimactic almost. Of it's like this one day, and now everything's done, and I'm like, wait, I just spent 6 months working on that.
You talk about it, and it is. I agree with you, because it's one moment, and everything else is like the entire time, and that's where your heart and passion and effort is going into, right? And then the people alongside you. And so I learned that a lot, because I had a teammate who ended up passing away, and she just impacted me in my life so much. And you know, she was a softball teammate at college, and she, you know, passed away after getting sick, and it just really shook me. And she was 21 years old, and I was 22. And I think I realized like every single day matters. And that joy in the journey, which literally is like a chapter in my book.
I like that.
It really is about like, where am I? What are the blessings all around me? Because again, that ties back to the mindset piece. And when you can shift your perspective and keep that mindset about it is the process. And our coach was super big on that. My college coach, and he coached me in my last Olympics. One of the best leaders I've ever met. I don't care what he does. He is a leader through and through, right? And it really was keeping that focus. Is you guys control the controllables. You cannot control the outcome all the time, but you can control what you bring today, the effort, the attitude, right? All those pieces we talked about. And so I think it's so important. And I don't care what we're doing or what age we are. We tend to think these principles, when you're young. No. I learned those things, and they have helped me beyond in tremendous ways and taken me further than I could have imagined.
I think too, a lot of times, I've heard a lot of people say this, but like you're so focused on like getting around like all these troubles. So you're having troubles and you're trying to get around them. But like when we're going through them, like instead of trying to get around, go through them and like think about what you can learn, because like you said, that stuff will carry you, you know, or you'll come back to it for the rest of your life. And I'm sure all the things you learned in softball, like now that you're not playing softball, I'm sure you're still taking away from those lessons every single day. But if you're trying to like hustle through them all the time, get around them, avoid them, you'll never learn what you're supposed to learn like in the midst of it. So
yeah. And staying calm in chaos. That's why when you see really, again, it was in the struggles that you saw the best leaders rise up. It was in the pressure moments that the best players, performed at peak performance, because no matter what pressure and stress and, no matter what environment there was around them, they were in control of their own thoughts and their own actions. And so to me, like, that's an amazing leader, right? And when I met Mark Orm and just got to meet him for a few minutes, like, I was like, I'm so glad I met you as our city leader.
He's
like, I could immediately tell in his demeanor. And he obviously asked me to come and share with you guys about teamwork, but I could just tell immediately, like, and you mentioned the strength finders, even bringing that type of stuff, that's leadership, because the idea is, how can we absolutely be our individual best, which then eventually will make us be our team best, which is the best city we could be. Right. And so I think, it's so crucial to stay calm in chaos. It allows you to have clarity of thought, and it allows you to make the best decisions. And like you mentioned, when you can do that through trials and struggles and hardships, when you get to the other side, you are stronger and better, and you're going to not only impact your life, you're going to impact those who are going through something similar.
I say this on like every episode, but Mark Orm is like the best thing that we have at the city. I'm not joking. He leads the city with so much integrity and so much humility. And I think those are the most important things for leaders. Obviously integrity and just the humility of it all. Like, he is so good at what he does. And I think he's so good for the team. And like, I could talk about him forever, but I think just the humility that he has of doing something like leading a city, being a city manager, is a big deal. And I've worked with a lot of city managers, met a lot of city managers, and he is like the most humble guy, like just doing it because he cares about the community and like doing it in like a very honoring way. And I'm so thankful that we have him, because he really is the best. So I feel like everyone who meets him, like within 2 seconds, is like, man, he's such a good guy. And it's like, he is. Yeah. It's not just.
Well, and so that, like, you're listening to you, like, that's my college coach who became an Olympic coach. Yeah. Like I said, and because it's who they are as people. Yeah. And that goes back to the relational piece and the people skills and what you just mentioned, that integrity. Like, I can say that about my coach 100%. And so when he was coaching us to be better players, he cared more about us as people. So I bet you could say that about Mark. Like, he wants these jobs done. He has high expectations. But what happens when you're a leader like that is that everybody else wants to rise up, also not only for themselves, but to please you as well, because they know they're empowered and they know you believe in them. I would think, do you feel like he believes in you? Yes. It's huge.
Yeah, he really is the best. But thank you so much for coming on to talk about leadership, about your journey. I'm so glad that we have you as a resident here in the community.
Yeah, thank you.
It's such a flex for us. So, and obviously we just wrapped up the Olympics, so very exciting timing. And thank you for coming on and for speaking to our staff. And I know you do a lot of speaking engagements around the community throughout the nation and everything. So thank you for doing all of that.
Well, thank you. I love Eastvale. It's been an honor to raise our family here and just feel very blessed.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the episode and you keep watching, and we'll see you later.